I'm Brian Siller.
And I'm Lawrence Jung. And the other teammates we have is Devin and Lane. Unfortunately, could not make it today. Our game is Ultimate Celebration, and we're from Rochester, New York. This year's Global Game Champion was Extinction, and we really wanted the player to feel the sense of being extinct. So some of the emotions that we wanted to portray to the player is like loss, hopelessness, and inevitability.
So the game starts. So the game starts out like a retro-style platformer, but it doesn't stay that way for long. As the game progresses, it begins to change. It becomes darker and more somber, and eventually it becomes very oppressive, ominous, frightening. The game eventually ends when a meteor shower strikes and inevitably hits the player, and there's no possible way to avoid this fate.
We really wanted the player to care about the game world. So there's a story behind it where the player is hosting a celebration and he needs to invite some friends over for this party. So as he's traversing the world, he meets some friends along the way, and each has a quote that tells a little bit about their personality. However, they also react based on the changes in the world. So their quote becomes more and more ominous as the world becomes darker.
And we also wanted the player to learn to grow attached to the world and appreciate that when they lose it. So we made the world large and non-linear. That way the player feels like they're part of something much bigger, but we don't give them enough time to explore everything the world has to offer.
Death is a huge part of our game, and we couldn't have the player die before the end of the world. So we had obstacles and enemies that got in their way and bounced them around the level to help them get to backtrack around.
And people have had different interpretations of the game, which is kind of interesting. It basically can serve as a metaphor for the inevitability of death, but a lot of people don't expect that. They're expecting it to be, a fun, simple platformer at first. And when people eventually see the end, they have a lot of different reactions. Some people are panicking. Some people seem okay with it, and some people are sort of stunned and don't really know what to do. And I think that's very similar to the types of responses you get from real-life tragedies, too.
Overall, our team was quite happy with the end result of the game, given the 48 hours. We had a pretty big world to explore, interesting level design, and we definitely incorporated the music into the game to augment the experience for the player. However, we also noticed that when the players were playing through the game, at some points it was frustrating for the player. And the game is also a little bit on the short side, which didn't allow enough time for the emotions that we wanted to give to the player, but to make the player feel to sink in properly.
So, what we'd like to do in the future is to make the game longer, increase the amount of time before the world ends, and that would allow us to create a larger world, and we could add more variety of environments, obstacles, and different secrets that players can find, and as well as giving it a longer musical score. And that would give the player more of an opportunity to really be drawn into the world.
We would like to thank our school, Rochester Institute of Technology, for hosting this year's Game Jam, and also Gamesauce for giving us this opportunity to be here today. We also like to thank Incompetech for allowing us to use their music throughout our game. And thank you for hearing our presentation.